We're going to learn how to find the surface area of a cone. And so what's a cone? You can think of an ice cream cone, like a sugar cone. This is a party hat, and so it has a cone shape. And when we're talking about surface area, remember surface area is for three-dimensional objects. We use the term just area for a two-dimensional object. So this is a three-dimensional object. And when you find area of anything, you can think of it as covering it. Or if you're going to paint something, you want to find the area. And so in the cone, you have the area of all of the sides around here, these kind of triangular shaped like side things, and this area on the bottom, or if you're thinking of it as an ice cream cone, it's on the top. And you can see that this is really a circle. And so in the formula, when you see radius, it's going to be radius of this circle. And so when we talk about finding the surface area, you can think about painting the whole, for this thing, the whole hat, including this thing on the bottom. So our formula is just pi times radius times slant height plus pi times radius squared. So remember, pi is just a number. That's a symbol that represents the number that we're estimating to be 3.14. And that is on the formula sheet, so you don't need to memorize that. You don't need to memorize this formula either because it's on your formula sheet. R is radius. As I said, when you talk about radius, they're talking about the circular part. The radius goes from the center of this circle out. If you don't know what radius and diameter are, you need to watch that video. S is slant height, and we saw the slant height when we were talking about surface area of a pyramid. And so slant height is the height from the top and you go down the side. So this length from the top down the side. We'll do a problem where they're going to give us just the height. The height is just from the top to the bottom. What is that height? So it's from the tip, and it goes, if you think about it, going straight down to the bottom to the center of this circle. That's the height. It is different than the length of this side. Those are not the same thing. So in this formula, you want the slant height, not the height. Plus pi 3.14 times radius squared. So remember what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out what's the area all around this object, including the bottom here. So you should recognize pi r squared is the area of a circle. So in this formula, that part of the formula is really just finding the area of this circle. This part of the formula is what's going to give you the area all around on the sides here. So when you add them up together, you're getting the whole area of this three-dimensional object. So let's do a problem. Let's say we have a cone, and its slant height is 7 meters, and its radius, remember that's in the circle, is 4 meters. So what's the surface area? All we're going to do is plug these numbers into this formula, get our calculator out, and figure out the answer. So surface area equals pi. Remember, pi is just a number, 3.14, times radius. Radius is 4, so we just put that in, times s. S is our slant height. They gave us that to be 7. So remember, when things are written beside each other, that means multiplication. So it's pi times radius times slant height. When we write that with parentheses, that also means multiplication. Plus pi is 3.14, times radius squared. Radius is 4, so it's 4 squared. Now we need to know order of operations, so if you don't know what order of operations means, you need to watch that video. But it means we have to do the exponent first, so we have to do the 4 squared first before we do any other multiplication or addition. So we have 3.14. I'm just going to rewrite this down. Times 4 times 7 plus 3.14. So what's 4 squared? Now again, remember, don't do 4 times 2. If you don't know what an exponent is, you need to watch that video. 4 squared is 4 times 4. So it's times 16. Now we do these two multiplications before we do the addition. So get your calculator out and multiply the numbers together. We get 87.92 plus 50.24. Now we can do the addition of these two numbers and you get 138.16 meters squared. Remember, this was meters. Remember, for any area problem, you're going to have square units. And so that's a key too. If your answers are in square units, the answers you have to choose from, you should know you have to do an area problem. Okay. So we'll do another example. Let's say we have a cone and the slant height is 10 inches, but here they're going to give us the diameter. And the diameter is 12 inches. And let's say they want us to round to the nearest tenth. So find the surface area and round to the nearest tenths. So surface area, pi 3.14 times radius. So here they've given us the diameter of 12 inches. So, and this is something that they will do, so don't get caught just plugging in the number 12 here. You need to remember you want the radius, not the diameter. So if you don't know how to find that, again, watch that video. So if the diameter is 12, our radius is half of that, so our radius is 6, times the slant height, which they told us was 10, plus pi 3.14 times radius squared. Again, you want the radius, which is 6, squared. We have to do the exponent first. So what's 6 squared? 6 times 6 is 36. Plug this multiplication into your calculator. You're going to get 188.4. 3.14 times 36 is going to give you 113.04. You add those two together, 301.44, and this is inches squared. But remember, they want us to round it to the nearest tenths. If you don't know how to do that, watch the video on rounding. Here's the tenths spot. So we look to the right of that, we see a 4. Since that's not greater than 5, we essentially round down, or essentially leave that number as it is in the tenth spot. So our final answer is going to be 301.4 inches squared. I'm going to take a pause and put a word problem up. Okay, so we have a word problem where we're going to paint a cone-shaped tank, we'll say, with a radius of 35 meters and a slant height of 100 meters. 1 gallon of paint covers 40 meters squared. So how much paint do you need? So we see meters squared, so we should automatically think we have an area problem. It's a cone, so it's a three-dimensional object, so we know it's going to be surface area, not just a regular area. And so to know how much paint we need, we're first going to have to figure out what's the surface area. We're going to have to paint the whole thing. And then, so that will tell us how many meters squared we have, and if 1 gallon of paint covers 40 meters squared, that we'll be able to figure out how many gallons we need. So the first thing we need to do is, what is the surface area? So we just figure this out like we normally have. 3.14 times radius times slant height plus 3.14 times radius squared, which is 35 squared. We do the exponent first. $35 squared is 1,225. Put that in your calculator. You do this multiplication, and you're going to get 10,996. You do this multiplication, you're going to get 3,846.5. You add those two numbers together, you'll get 14,842.5 meters squared. So that is the area that we have to paint. So if that's the total area, and 1 gallon can cover 40 meters squared, and we have 14,842.5 meters squared, how many gallons do we need? Well, if one of them can cover that much, we basically need to know how many of these 40 meters squared do we have. And to find that out, we're just going to simply divide. 14,842.5 divided by 40, and you plug that into your calculator, you're going to get 371.06. So that's how many gallons we need. If 1 gallon covers 40 meters squared, this is the total amount of area we have. We're going to divide that by 40. This is how many gallons we need to cover our whole area. Let me caution you that you might not see that answer on in the answer block for your choices to choose from, because normally when you go to a store you can't buy 0.06 gallons of paint. They'll only be sold by the gallon. So if we only buy 371 gallons, we're not going to have enough. We're going to have just a little bit that we can't paint if we only buy 371 gallons. So really, we're going to have to buy 372 gallons in order to cover the whole thing. We'll have a little bit left over, but that's how much we need in order to paint the whole thing. So I just want to caution you that sometimes if you get to this point and you don't see that answer there, you're going to have to think a little bit, because they'll probably give you an answer of 371 and they'll give you an answer of 372, so you need to choose 372. We're going to do one more problem. Here is a problem in which they've given us the height. The height is 4 feet. The radius is 3 feet. So they'd probably put this in some sort of word problem of find the surface area of a cone whose height is 4 feet and radius is 3 feet. So don't get caught if they just say the height. Remember, the height is from the tip of the cone down to the center of the circle. That is going to be different than the slant height. These are going to be different numbers. But I want you to see that if you're given the height and the radius, or if they give the diameter, you can always cut it in half and get the radius, you can find the slant height and then you can find the surface area. So this is a little bit of a complicated problem, but you can do it. Because if you see that this is really forming a triangle. So we really have a triangle where this is 4 and this is 3, and here is your slant height. Now, in order to figure this out, you're going to have to use something called the Pythagorean Theorem. The Pythagorean Theorem is on your formula sheet, but you need to obviously know how to work it. And there's a video that you can watch on the Pythagorean Theorem if you don't know how to do this. So the Pythagorean Theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. I'm not going to go through how to solve the Pythagorean Theorem. You need to watch that video. I'm going to do it quickly here. So we're going to call this a, this b, and then our slant height is going to be c. So when we solve for c, that will give us the slant height. Once we have the slant height, we can solve for the surface area. So Pythagorean Theorem, a squared, a is 3, 3 squared, plus b squared, b is 4, equals c squared. 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16, 25 equals c squared. But we don't want c squared, we want c. So we're going to take the square root of each side. Again, watch the video if this doesn't make sense to you, the video on the Pythagorean Theorem. So the square root of 25 is 5. So our slant height is 5. So we figured out what our slant height is. So now we can find the surface area of this cone. And we're just going to do it like we've been doing all along. 3.14 times the radius, which they gave us was 3, times the slant height, which we figured out was 5, times 3.14 times the radius squared, which was 3. Again, we have to do the exponent first. 3 squared is 9. If you plug those numbers in to your calculator, you are going to get 47.1 plus 28.26. You add those two together, you get 75.36, and this was in feet, so feet squared.